There are two types of decisions. There are reversible and non-reversible. And if it's a reversible decision, you want to take all the data and make it quickly. If it's a non-reversible decision, then your accuracy is far more important. And I find that humans are one of the few creatures in the world that can see the future. The thing that I would recommend to anyone listening looking for some type of action to take out of this is start tracking your accuracy and your decision making. So one thing I started a long time ago is I would write down the decisions that I made and then retroactively see if they were correct or not in hindsight. So if I said, this is how we should do it, and it was wrong, then I will go back and say, okay, like that was incorrect. And then I'll literally have an accuracy score for that day, for that week, for that month. And it doesn't need to be something that's like super intensive, like you don't need to, kill yourself over it. But the idea is that you'll realize for a lot of people that you're saying things in absolutes. You're thinking about things like so concretely and saying it, and then it turns out that you were wrong. I think a lot of people would be surprised like what their actual percentage was.
Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast, where I unpack and narrate stories of ambitious people who turn obstacles into opportunities. My goal for this podcast is to create a platform to narrate underdog stories and maybe play a small, teeny tiny role in inspiring you. I intend to highlight the underdog mentality and make authentic conversations with people who play the long game, take action with a chip on their shoulder, and convert obstacles into opportunities. Buckle up, as I'll be bringing some authentic founders, VCs, community builders, and content creators who got underestimated their whole lives, and yet they beat all the odds to become insanely successful. Now, today I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome sponsor, acquire.com. Selling a business is as tough as building a business. As someone who went through this process once, selling my own startup, I know the pain it takes to get to the end zone. This is where our sponsor shines. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a solid SaaS product, acquired customers, and generating consistent monthly revenue. The problem is you're not growing for whatever reason. Lack of focus, lack of skill, or just plain lack of interest, and you feel stuck. What should you do? The story I'd like to hear is you buckled down, somehow reignited the fire, get past yourself and the cliches, and start working on your business rather than just in the business. You start building an audience, move out of your comfort zone to do sales and marketing, and in 6 months, you triple your revenue. The reality isn't as simple. Situations may be different from every founder facing these crossroads, but too many times, the story ends up being one of inaction and stagnation until the business becomes less valuable or worse, worthless. If you find yourself here or your story is likely headed down a similar road, I offer you a third option. Consider selling your business on acquire.com. Capitalizing on the value of your time is a smart move. Acquire.com is free to list and they've helped hundreds of founders already. Go to try.acquire.com/Sharath and see for yourself if this is the right option for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. King the Wander hoodie.
The hoodie is looking great, dude. It's a great vibe. I love it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate all kudos to Wander. Welcome, folks. Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast. You just got a sneak peek of who I'm interviewing right now. Without further ado, Andrew Entwistle, the CEO of Wander. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great. Life is good. Sun is shining. World is spinning. I'm on with you. Super appreciative to be here. So yeah, stoked.
Thank you. And for folks who are watching this video, I'm actually rocking Wander's hoodie. It's one of my favorite hoodies. It's cozy. It's like that, John was telling. It has that vibe, the Gen Z vibe, which I require as a millennial. But
looks great. Yeah, you look good in it. It's a good color.
Yes. So I was one of the founding members, I guess, when you guys launched the $100 membership. Yeah. So I just quickly
there's not many of those. There's over 200, close to 200,000 users on the platform and sub 2,000 founding members. So it's a pretty special group.
Wow. Okay.
We'll be
Probably
doing an
like
event. We'll be doing an event soon. So we'll have like a big event at one of the properties and everyone's going to be invited. It'll be a great time.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, looking forward for that. For folks who don't know John, let me give you guys like a brief intro. John is a dynamic founder CEO of Wander, a venture innovating the short-term rental space, delivering high quality experiences, I would say, for travelers who want change, who are like, fed up with the hotel system, all the Airbnbs and whatnot. The beautiful thing about Wander is Wander owns all the properties, so they have this amazing human touch, and the detail, like attention to detail, and the care they put in all these properties make it, unique, right? He's also he was the co-founder and CEO of Coder, a venture back in the day, made strides moving the development workstation to the cloud. So I want to talk about that experience as well.
Yeah.
And he was featured on Forbes under 30 in 2019. That's a massive feat. And he received the prestigious Thiel Fellowship, which 100% I want to talk about in the episode. Taking a break from traditional college path, spending 2 years honing all skills that you're kind of mastering right now. John, what an inspirational journey so far. I'm
Uh,
pumped, excited,
yeah.
fascinating entrepreneurial journey, I would say. But right off the bat, let's talk about Coder. Like, you were kind of, with, I think, other two founders, you've built this platform. What happened? What is the transition, like coding, the software, SaaS, like, all that world to real estate? That's a big leap, right? So talk to me about that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I can sort of give like a little bit more context because obviously, there's like a little bit of a jump from just like your daily life into starting what turned out to be a pretty decent sized venture backed company. Um, I've always been passionate about computers and software and building. I really attribute a lot of that, to my pop. He was a single dad and constantly working, and as a kid I would watch him work and be like, I want to work like him. And so I ended up starting a few companies when I was a kid, 13, 14, that did pretty well, like low six figures
Mm,
in revenue. And I always joke meant that I wasn't focused on my homework much after that. But it was really that experience, right, and getting to
mm,
build and to fail and to learn at such a young age that really kind of just made me obsessed and passionate about building companies and product and brand, and what
mm,
that could mean. As you can imagine, when you're a kid, this idea that you can have outsized impact by collecting all these people and working towards this shared vision, it was just really
mm,
empowering. And so that's sort
mm,
of why I fell in love with it.
mm,
In terms of starting Coder, so during those years, I met my co-founders, Kyle and Amar. Amar was one of the system administrators. Kyle was an engineer, and we would spend dozens of hours like just talking on Skype and working together and building these things.
mm,
And the idea for Coder was actually Kyle's. I remember the or the Skype message like it was yesterday. He was like, "I have an idea," and my
mm,
initial response was like, "I'm in." Like, it wasn't like that was
mm.
our relationship back in the day. It was like, let's just do
Wow.
it. We were, kids just building
Yeah.
companies. Um, so yeah, we ended up moving down to Austin. I didn't go to college.
Mm,
We started Coder while I was in high school, which I was doing online, so that gave me a lot of extra time and freedom, which is
wow.
something that I definitely recommend to young entrepreneurs. If you're in high school and building a company, talk to your
Mm,
parents about potentially having some flexibility. I'll warn you that socially it's a little bit more difficult,
mm-hmm,
but yeah, having that freedom and time as a kid is really special.
mm.
And so, yeah, started the company, ended up doing pretty well. We raised about $45 million, now has a bunch of massive enterprise customers, and ran that as CEO through ages 18 through 23, and all the way through Series B. So,
Wow. So that's, first of all, at the age of 18, kids are spending in beaches, right? Like they're spending spring breaks and doing all sorts of nonsense. Most majority of them, but it's so fascinating to see that you have a set of clarity and a straight path that you want to achieve. So talk to me about at that age, you're prone to uh, distractions, right? Like you're kind of, there are so many things you can go, it can go wrong in many ways. So how did the hell John, the 18-year-old John, stayed in the path? Like, okay, this is what I want to do for the longest continuous of time. Like, what driven you? Do you have mentors? What who helped you like push you if you're taking like bad decisions or making
Yeah.
wrong moves?
I've always been very goal oriented. Um, constantly moving towards what your objectives are and like thinking in pretty massive time increments.
Hmm.
Speaking more personally, candidly, it's a little bit of a flaw of mine. It's like I'm
Oh, really?
25 and like I spend so much time thinking about and building the future that a lot of
Hmm.
those distractions, I just skip, which isn't
Hmm.
necessarily a good thing either, right? Like I think it's hyper important to go out and spend time with your friends and these events and those different things. So it's
Hmm.
actually something that I actively have to work on is
Oh,
saying
wow.
like, okay, like go and have some adventure, go out like and do something with your, friends or otherwise, as opposed to like just being focused on the company. Like if you look at my calendar for just the last week, because we're recording this on a Friday, it's like
Hmm.
I've had 7 flights this week.
Oh
Like
my
I've been
god.
all over the place. That's why like my background and hair and everything is a little bit of a mess, so people have to excuse me because
No, no, no.
it's been a rough one. um
You look like $1 million, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. um so yeah, I mean, for me, I would say that it's just a part of who I am.
Hmm.
And I'd say that that got instilled in me at a pretty young age. I sort of set rules for life, what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be as a person, what I wanted to accomplish, and I'm a
Hmm.
firm believer in this idea that like there's only a few things that we know to be true, and one of them is that we only get one life, or at least that's what it seems like,
Hmm.
depending on your religious
Exactly.
beliefs. And I just want to make the most of it. Like, I want to have as few regrets as possible. I just want to be a good person. I want to treat people right. I want to be kind. I want to accomplish as much as I can, help others accomplish their goals. And yeah, it forces you to take a pretty zoomed out point of view, which, when you think that way, it can make it hard even to like enjoy the little things, to a certain extent. But um, yeah, it's a double-edged sword, I guess is what I would say. But for people who struggle with the opposite, I would say to really zoom out and think about your life as sort of this book that you're writing each and every day, and to think about your
Hmm.
chapters and what you're going to be focused on, and yeah, work backwards from your goals. And if things aren't moving at the pace that you want, then you may have to be a little bit more focused. But I highly recommend balancing it all. And also, of course, working on something you love. Like
Hmm.
work life harmony, I think, is a really important concept, where your
Hmm.
work and your life are so intertwined that you can't tell the difference.
Yeah. So for some, I think mostly people who are very passionate about building something for themselves and putting it out and finding people like themselves, everybody loses the touch of, or at least which is what, which is life, what is work, right? Because it's all in the background. We all constantly think about what about this feature, what about this experiment. So
Totally.
that the hustle mindset is always like on. But why do you think about when did you when you said uh, it's not a good thing? Elaborate. Like, do you have any regrets in
Yeah, certainly.
your past like
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go to prom because like I was too busy working on my companies. Like,
Mm,
like I put off like dating and like seeing friends and going out. I mean, like, most kids are like going out and partying, and like it's like I wasn't going out and drinking. If you looked at my weekends, and this is still true to this day, like my weekends I spend
mm,
working. Um, and so it's the flip side to that, of course, are the adventures that I've
mhm,
had, and like the at least the accomplishments on paper. I still don't view myself as successful, even though I realize that that can sound weird.
mm,
Um, And so, it's one of those things where there are certain moments and times and memories that you'll never get back. Like I will never be able to go to prom again, right? It's like that
Mm.
chapter is closed. And if I did, it would be like weird, right? And so, like, and there are certain moments too, like when you have a kid, right? Like that kid gets older no matter what you do. And so you can never get that time back with them. And I realize that can be like, I realize that that's a popular opinion specifically for older entrepreneurs, um, where they advocate the importance of not losing track of those moments. But
Mm.
it's something that I'm even cognizant of,
Mm.
today. And that's not to say that I am not working literally every single day of the week. But I
Mm.
find it very important. And this is even something that my board advocates to me is like, they'll be like, John Andrew, like, are you getting time to go and do the things that you're also supposed to be doing? Which, theoretically also makes you a better operator, getting a little bit
True.
of a breath.
Mm-hmm.
So it's certainly a challenge. I think a lot of people, probably suffer with it one way or the other and finding that balance. But
Mm.
yeah, I can say that I have certain regrets where I close certain doors in pursuit of my goals, and for the most part, 90% of those doors were good to close. But there should have
Mm.
been a few that I was more open to.
And how do you handle regrets?
Yeah, so I actually love fixing them. Um,
Okay.
like if it is fixable, like I will go back. Like a funny story. So the other day I was out to dinner and I was talking about like my childhood with, whoever it was. And this memory popped into my head that one of my friends was having a birthday party and so was another one of my friends. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to split the time, I'll go to one and then go to the other. What ended up happening though was that a lot of people ended up going to that second person's party. So there were far fewer at the first ones. And I
Mm.
recognized that. And I wish that I had been like, okay, I don't need to go to this second birthday party. Like, I'm just going to stay here with my first friend because there's less people here and that's more important. That's more meaningful.
Mm.
Um, and so, like, that was always a regret of mine, which sounds stupid, right? Like the types of regrets that John Andrew has are like relatively silly in that context, but like it bothered me. And so I reached
Mm.
out to him, haven't talked to this kid in like, 15 years or whatever. And I was like, hey
Wow.
dude, like I wish I'd stayed at your party. And of course he's like, like, oh, like don't worry about it, whatever. Um, but yeah, I just like I like to make things right if I make a mistake and fix them. And not even if I make a mistake, but if I wasn't like great.
Mm.
And if there are times too where I can't go back and fix it, it's like recognizing it, apologizing for it, and then again doing what you can to make it right. Or if not, making sure that you never make that type of mistake again. Because obviously we're not perfect. I mean, we're
Hmm.
all super far from it, but I think the pursuit is important.
We're all work in progress. Nobody's perfect. We're all like this book that never ends,
Totally.
till our last breath. So what you said is true. The best way to handle regrets is having closures. Uh, and for some things that you can't go back in time, you just have to find peace with it. You just have to sit with yourself, like the prom thing you said. You just have to make yourself like comfortable with it by not being there, at that age, going to that event, whatever it is, that particular,
Yeah,
in this case,
absolutely.
right? I think closure is such an important thing. I do practice that, and sometimes it's hard, uh, because it not only makes you uncomfortable, it is weird, right? Like you kind of are welcoming or digging in to these memories that really hurt you, right? And it takes a lot of courage. So I appreciate you for, sharing those things,
Yeah,
on the
and I
show,
think
like,
I think the big thing that I would advise to people to whoever's listening is to also be cognizant of minimizing regrets as you make
mm,
decisions. Like a regret
mm,
minimization framework I find is super important. And what I found is as I get older, candidly I have very very few regrets. I mean
mm,
maybe it'll be like, one once a quarter. as opposed
Mm.
to like, when you're a kid, it's far more frequent. And again, those regrets, like the regrets that I have are like very like small potatoes. Like I'm very
Mm.
self-reflective. I'm like my own worst critic. And so
Mm.
like I'm constantly striving for it to be the best that I can be and handle every situation perfectly. And that's obviously not easy. But
Mm.
to recognize like and look through that lens and really focus on your accuracy in your decision making, I think is a really important thing, especially for young people. You'll notice that if you
Mm.
do that over the course of months, years, beyond, that all of a sudden your life just becomes like a lot smoother.
And I think most of the regrets happen because we tend to make decisions that reason, you know, that might feel like good in that moment, but in retrospect it feels
Totally.
bad, right? And talk to me about like your decision making. Do you have any frameworks that you use now that
Yeah.
you're a quite successful founder, right? It's not your first endeavor. You've built so many companies, you've raised millions of dollars, you hired so many awesome talent working with you. So it's a tough job. So that means tough job means tough decisions, and sometimes you have to make it quickly. So explain or elaborate your decision making process.
Yeah. So there are two types of decisions. There are reversible and non-reversible. And if it's a reversible decision, you want to take all the data and make it quickly. If it's a non-reversible decision, then your accuracy is far more important. And I find that humans are one of the few creatures in the world that can see the future, right? There's this
Mm.
idea, and I'll give an example, that if you have a lot of time to think about a problem, you're more accurately able to predict the outcome, right? So if we were to use like a math equation, for example, if I was to ask you, like, what is 46,399 divided by like the square root of like whatever? Like, that's a complicated thing that you can't like do in your head off the bat, right? Or
Hmm.
at least I certainly can't.
No, I can't.
But if I gave you an hour and
Right.
a pen and paper, then you could,
Yeah.
right? And if I gave you a month, then you would have triple checked it 1,000 times and you would have
Hmm.
certainty. And so it's this idea that in certain problems, especially ones that are complex, when you have the right tools and the right amount of time, you can be fairly accurate. Now, of
Hmm.
course, things change in a startup very quickly. There are all these external variables. It's not as black and white as a math problem. And so you have to redo the problem multiple times. You have to check and make sure that everything you assumed is correct, and
Mm.
those different pieces. So that's sort of how I think about it. Is this problem reversible or non-reversible? And if it's non-reversible, how important is it that I get it right? And then I'll allocate the appropriate amount of time. Now, I won't
Mm.
reach this point of being paralyzed in my decision making, but as you get further into your career, like, and this is something that Jeff Bezos is famous for, it's the importance of being correct as an executive. One of
Mm.
Amazon's virtues is that we're right a lot. And I think
Mm.
that that's a really important idea. The thing that I would recommend to anyone listening looking for some type of action to take out of this is start tracking your accuracy and your decision making. So one thing I started a long, long time ago is I would write down the decisions that I made and then retroactively see if they were correct or not in hindsight. I would look
Mm.
at, were the things that I said accurate? So if I said, this is how we should do it, and it was wrong, then I will go back and say, okay, like that was incorrect. And then I'll literally have an accuracy score for that day, for that week, for that month. And it doesn't
Mm.
need to be something that's like super intensive, like you don't need to, kill yourself over it. But the idea is that you'll realize for a lot of people that you're saying things in absolutes. You're thinking about things like
Mm.
so concretely and saying it, and then it turns out that you were wrong. I think a lot of people would be surprised like what their actual percentage was. So
Mm.
I really strive to be as accurate as possible now. And I'll even express like how sure I am because I hate being wrong, like in that context. Or I shouldn't say I
Mm.
hate being wrong. It's just like something I strive not to be. And so I'll say like I'm 80% sure. And then
Mm.
even giving the team that variable and saying I'm 80% sure, but there's a 20% chance I'm wrong, it's like then they'll be like, okay, that's enough wiggle room for us to go and hedge progress, for us to go and explore other options, so that if this ends up not working out, then we know what we're going to do and how we're going to pursue in the future.
I love the way you framed your answer. It seems like you solve it as a problem, everything that comes your way, right? I love that, because when you put it in an example saying, if I give you 1 hour, the outcome is different. If I give you this tool, the outcome is different. If I give this much time, the outcome is different. Oftentimes in startups, and I think you can chime in here as well, people miss those variables. Everybody wants to solve a problem, but what they lack, including myself, and most of times, is I have to give enough time for myself to solve this, or find enough tools to, or resources, or people to actually contribute to that problem, so that we can solve together, if it's a team or individually. And that is really important. I love the way you framed, and people approach decision makings through problem solving, and put it in a way with added resources, added time. Probably, like, the accuracy bit will improve over time. One curious question: you said, you will state the accuracy when you communicate to your team, or when you make a decision. Couple of questions: when were you 100% sure about a decision? Can you explain, can you share some of the moments that you are like, wow, this is like bang on, and you look back like 10 years ago and like, okay, these are the 100%. And talk to me about which went wrong too. Like, I'm
Yeah.
100% sure, but the outcome is not 100%. So yeah, two questions there.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, that 100% certainty is exceptionally rare. That only happens on things that are black and white. Getting to high certainty and having them work out well is actually like a pretty common occurrence. I can
Mm,
look at like the team, the branding decisions that Wander has made, like all of those different. I mean, there are so many. Candidly, building a successful company, and to be clear again, like I view myself and my career and my companies at such early stage that like I would never say that they're successful, especially like when you consider like the ones that truly are. um so I want to make sure that everyone like understands that within the
Right.
context.
So one thing I have to tell people as well, you're very modest. You can tell, John, because you've done, man, the resume itself is so impressive. So I just want to acknowledge that you've done phenomenal work. But I will work with you in that topic, that you're still early. But to me, I think, you're at least for me, like, 5-6 steps ahead of me.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And you're doing phenomenal things as well. So um yeah, so anyway, like what I was saying, there are very few decisions that are 100%. The majority are high 80s, high 90s, and those tend to work out well and they tend to be pretty
Mm,
pivotal, right?
mm,
Talking about whatever domain or handle, like to,
mm,
like pursue a certain strategy that everyone says will not work, but you've done the math and you think that it will.
mhm,
I think the ones that are always unfortunate is that when you have a pretty high conviction that you're correct, yet you end up being incorrect. And so it's really important to constantly again reevaluate if the decision you made was correct, and then if not, what variables changed. You asked me like what decisions I've made historically where I was thought I was doing something correct and it was just wrong.
mm,
Um, all of them had to do with external variables that ended
mm,
up turning against my favor.
mm,
I've had it countless times where I'll interview users for a new product, and all of a sudden,
mm,
over the course of 5 months, there's some type of massive shift in consumer behavior or the macro or otherwise
mm,
that, like, now the idea doesn't work. And that's why you
mm,
hear a lot of founders and VCs talk about this idea of timing.
mm.
Timing is also something that's so critical, and also why speed is really important as well. Like
Yeah.
I'll give you a great example, like starting a crypto company. I mean, gosh, however many years ago, like back in the early days of crypto, right? Could be a great idea. Maybe you'll build the Coinbase, right? There's so
Right, right,
much blue ocean. Starting a
right.
crypto company today, especially let's just say it's like a wallet company or something.
Mm,
It's like it doesn't
mm,
really make any sense. Like there's so much
mm,
competition, the timing's terrible, there's no VC
mhm.
funding. And
Yeah.
so, and like the users aren't as passionate about it in the current macro. And like, to be clear, like this is not a like hit on crypto. Like I'm a huge fan of like,
Oh
blockchain
yeah,
as a
yeah.
technology and beyond. But
Right, right.
I was just giving an example of like how
Of
timing
the
really
timing.
affects things.
Right,
And
right.
so I'd say that those are the big ones, is that the sand began to shift underneath my feet and I wasn't paying attention fast enough.
Mm,
And so I was still obviously like very quick in adjusting course. But I would
mm,
say that that's really the big thing to watch out for, is
mm,
are things changing? Are the variables changing? And then candidly, the best way to do it is just make the decision again. So like you think about it, like I'll give an even better example. Like ask yourself, would I hire this person again? Like they can be at the company, they can be
mm,
working for you, they can be doing great things, and just ask yourself the question, like would I hire this
mm,
person again? And if the answer is
mm,
no, then obviously something changed and you need to make those adjustments. And that goes for
mm,
product decisions, branding, marketing, all that sort of fun stuff. So I think it's good to ask yourself the hard questions over and over and over again as time passes and variables change.
mm. And when those, first of all, that's an amazing answer. Uh, I love the way you said, you are right in a way, but the variables are wrong. Meaning, the timing is wrong, the people change, behavior changes, and all that. How do you handle such moments? Like when you put so much effort, this is a lot of people give up there. I don't know if you can see. This is a little blurred.
Yeah, I can
That's like,
recognize it from the blur. The you
yeah,
are
yeah, but
here.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, this is pointless. This is one of the famous things Jack Butcher did. One of my favorite creators. He's the number one guest on this podcast. Grateful for that. I love that because around that point where it's like kind of like a boiling point, right? Like if you push yourself a little bit, you will make it, right? People give up because they surrender to external constraints or variables. So how do you handle those situations? How do you pivot so fast, adapt to the situation? Where do you find that energy and courage?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing that I'll say is that like I have a remarkably like high pain tolerance. Like I just can't quit. Like
Mm,
I would have to like, be dead or like paralyzed to like stop working. Especially on something that I believe in.
mm,
Um, in terms of, that being said, if you're working on something that is a wrong idea or the wrong strategy, just trying to like power your way through it like won't get you where you need to go. Like it's just going to
mm,
be extra painful, an extra amount of time, and like it may not work. Like if you think about it, does it make more sense for me to go and dig a hole with a shovel or go and find an excavator? And and a lot of founders will just go and start digging with a shovel. And it's like that's where you need to be a little bit thoughtful. You need to plan, you need to like do all those things and really strategize. It does take a lot of, I mean, courage is the right word for it. I actually found myself reading a book about the importance of courage to reestablish that in myself as you continue along, right? It's like
mm,
when you're running a company, of course, again, like you're wrong some percentage of the time and that can cause you to
sure.
lose courage. And so it's
Right.
like you have to figure out that balance and ensure that
Mhm,
like that core piece of yourself stays true. But to tell a
mm,
little bit of a story, and I'll never forget this, at Coder we spent probably close to 2 years building our first product. It was a consumer IDE. We like built it ourselves. It was in the browser. At the time, it was like groundbreaking, right? Because you have to remember that like the stuff didn't really exist. And we had just launched and we saw users start to skyrocket. We had raised our seed round from Redpoint and Uncork. It was like a $4 million seed. And again, at the time, I was like super young. Like I couldn't even drink. and we turned on monetization and no one paid. 60,000 users, no one paid. And
Wow.
I remember looking at this, 30-person team and talking with my co-founders and saying that this is the best way to monetize. And that if this doesn't work, it's not a matter of refining the product or whatever else. It's just, it's not working. We need to pivot. We need to adjust. And even though we had plenty of cash in the bank and the like, within, call it, a week, we made the decision to start the pivot. We explored 3 options, ended up going down the enterprise route, moving, enterprises, development environments to the cloud, which ended up being the right decision. And, ended up having to let go of some incredibly talented people who were working on parts of the company that were no longer relevant. And so, like, we did that all in a very short amount of time, a lot of which was because, like, when you're losing money, when your company is like losing money, time is not your friend. And so, like, for us, it was just all about the speed of execution. And it certainly was scary and it sucked. And the morale was terrible inside of our little office. I mean, I even like remember buying an office cat to try and like cheer people up. Like,
Wow.
it's like, like that kind of like
Vibe.
silliness. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the vibe was super down. It's like we worked so hard on this product and we were shutting it down.
Right.
And when I say work so hard, I mean 14-hour days plus every single day, including weekends. And that was for the team. Like, that wasn't even just for me as the
The
founder.
whole
That
team.
was like the entire team. People
Yeah.
like gave their like, their soul to pushing. And
Right.
we ended up building something that was incredible, but it
Right.
certainly wasn't something that people were willing to pay for. And then, 3-4 months later, we got through that, like those moments. We ended up launching Code Server, which is now one of like the most broadly used developer tools out there. It's like millions and millions of downloads and all that sort of cool stuff. And then, now it's like you have all these massive Fortune 500 companies that like write their software on Coder. But it's hard and it sucks. But you have to be very candid with yourself. And then, you need to have some courage and you need to push through.
And what was the book? I'm curious. What was the book you read?
I can't remember it off the top of my head. I'll pull it up while we
No
chat.
worries.
I promise I won't like start doing emails or something on you.
No. It's fine. It's fine. You. That's
I
amazing.
think
First of all,
courage is literally in the title, which
is
is
it the
funny.
courage to be disliked? I think
I
it should
don't
be
think
that
it's that.
because it's one of the famous books.
Courage is calling. Fortune favors the brave by Ryan Holiday. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, great book. I recommend it.
Yeah. First of all, let me tell you this. It's really, really amazing to hear that story. All of your answers are so amazing because you have you have an innate story behind it. And I love the way you kind of like, bring them to life.
Yeah, everything that I've learned is through experience.
Yeah.
And of course, too, I'm very lucky to have some incredible mentors. I mean, if you think about it, like on Coder's board, you have legendary investors, Alex Bard, Glenn Solomon, Andy McLaughlin. Like, imagine having those people like around you. Those are the people you're hanging out with as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid.
Wow.
And then your employees, right, are massively tenured. They've lived whole other lives beyond like where you are. Like, those are the people that I was hanging around with. And so I'm very, very cognizant that who I am today is very much a reflection of just how fortunate I was to be surrounded by such incredible people. And that's why too, I always try and like just remember that and learn as much as I can from everyone around me. Like, I'm one of those people who, like, when I meet someone new, it's like I want to understand who they are and what they think and what I can learn from them, regardless of who they are, how quote unquote successful they are or not. Because obviously, like, everyone has something to teach us. But yeah, I can say certainly that like who I am is just a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears, and being incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by such amazing people. And then
Right.
also, of course, to be born in such an incredible country that gave me those opportunities, to have a
Mm.
father who was willing to raise me like
Mm.
on his own. And then also, too, when you're handed this kid who wants to not go to high school and like wants to not go to college and doing all these
Right.
things to
Right.
support that. I mean, yeah, I am so incredibly lucky, and yeah, I think it would be ignorant to think otherwise.
Oh, no, no. Appreciate you for telling that as well, because a lot of pieces should come together, right? And I think this is a quote, not a quote. I might butcher this. Fred Rogers has said this quite many times, and I kind of reminisce. Once in a while, you're the kind of you're the output of the people surrounded by you, and a lot of pieces should come together. Meaning, a lot of people should help you so that you make your dreams come true. It's not so. It's not an alone journey. It's like a together journey. So
Yeah, no one can get here. Like no one can get to this earth without the help of others. Like if you think
yeah.
about it like that, it's like you can't even be born without the impact
Mm,
of
yeah.
others. And so, yeah, I think recognizing that is really important. And of course, too, it's not like life rolls out a red carpet for you. Like you have to increase your
Mm,
surface area of getting lucky.
mhm,
And
mhm,
obviously, like you have to work incredibly hard in that. And of course, too, like, I've had a lot of very unfortunate things like happen in my life in early childhood as well. But
mm,
it's recognizing like, yeah, it's just recognizing like how fortunate you are and making sure that you don't waste that opportunity. I think is super important.
right. Gratitude is a fuel, right?
Absolutely.
And once you have that mindset, it will never go away. Once you start thinking about what you have and what you want really fade away, you know the desire to get what you want will slowly fade away because of what you have. And of course, we all have to chase some dream, chase an ambition, uh, inspire others, and all that is on paper is really good, amazing. But personally, I think I like your mindset. uh, One thing, how do you start from zero? Like, when you said about you build this incredible product at Coder, spend 2 years, 30 people team, no output, nothing happened, none of the needle moved. You have to start from zero, in a way. Talk to me about that, the transition, like,
Yeah.
in at that age. um, what were some things that really worked for you that you want to pass on to others?
Yeah, starting from zero is difficult, but candidly, it's not the most difficult thing that you'll do. Really, I would say starting. I mean, people have quotes like back and forth on this, right? Like because it sounds good. They're like, starting is the most difficult thing you can do. It's like no, like starting's the easiest thing. Like
Hmm.
building something is really difficult. Um, and the other piece of advice I'd give to any founders or people working in early stage companies is that it never gets easier. Like point blank, never gets easier.
Hmm.
Like the problems just get bigger and more challenging. And the other thing to recognize is if you're the CEO, there is a literal funnel of all of the most difficult problems in the company that make their way to you. Like by definition, I work on the things that other people don't want to work on or can't. And
Right.
so like, that's why like, when I was a kid, like the people at Coder would call me like the shovel because it's like I would just shovel whatever it was that needed to be shoveled. And so,
Hmm.
starting from zero is difficult. I think it's more scary than anything else. But like I think a positive attitude and then building momentum is so key. Like momentum begets
Hmm.
momentum. Like just get started, get like grinding, start working on it. Like and again, plan beforehand is like the big thing I recommend. Again, like humans can see the future. Spend some time planning before. Like let's say this: if it's going to take you 4 years to build a product, then like you should probably plan a little bit and
Hmm.
like try and forecast if people actually want it. Um, so
Hmm.
that's my advice is like plan ahead of time, then get to work, build the momentum, go quickly, have massively positive energy, and just check things off that list. Like you'll make a list in the early days and check things off, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, then adjust quickly, keep going.
Momentum. I think that's the key. That's the key takeaway. Um, Momentum, I think, is the oxygen for any startup, right? If momentum dies, basically you're dead.
Oh,
Um,
growth is so critical. I mean, and there's
right.
actually even like very logical like ties to the public markets that you can draw on why, like how it's actually valued. Like you can
Mm,
assign a dollar value to the growth rate of a company. You'll have one
mm,
company that's doing $1 billion a year in revenue that's growing at 10% year over year, and it'll be valued at 2-3 billion. Or you can have
mm,
another one that's doing $1 billion a year but is growing 2x year over year, and it'll be a $10 billion company. And so it's not just like,
mm,
oh, it's really important for team morale and all these things and the customer. It's like there's an actual enterprise value creation with your
mm,
speed and rate of growth in a,
mm.
in a startup. Now, you have to make sure that you're not like growing to your death, right? Like you can't scale negative unit economics and like
Right, right.
hire a bunch of overpaid people and all those different things, which is really hard, especially again as like your board is pushing you and things look good and all that fun stuff. You
Mm,
can't do that, right? But like, yeah, growth rate is super important. And there is a shift where it goes from like creating an idea, finding idea market fit, to building a product, finding product market fit, to then for a founder, you end up making this transition to managing to the metrics. It's this
mm,
idea of like managing the back book. And like that's something that obviously isn't talked about very often because so few companies actually reach that stage. Like there's so much
mm,
content about the early days of a startup and all that fun stuff. I feel like there's a lot of founders who like reach this point where like, okay, now I need to scale, like things are going well, and they're like all left like with no books,
mm.
no guidance, no, like there's far fewer mentors, right? If you think about it, how many people
Right.
like started a startup versus how many people exited something for like a great, great outcome.
Right.
So yeah, it shifts as you can imagine. Your priorities shift, your job shifts, and the faster you do it, I mean, you're effectively like hiring yourself out of a job every like 3 to 6 months. So
Right. Oh man, the I have so many questions, but I definitely want to be mindful about the time. Talk to me about Thiel Foundation. How did you get into it? Uh, what kind of impact it made in your life?
yeah, so Founders Fund invested in Coders seed round. So that's how I had that connection. That was something that the first person I met at Founders Fund was actually Peter himself.
Mm,
And he immediately like kind of passed me on to the rest of the partnership, and they're incredible, by the way. Like what a 10 out of 10 firm in every
mm,
respect, candidly. Like they're really solid. I mean, obviously I know that
mm,
they're a little bit controversial,
mhm.
so not like diving into politics, but
Right, right,
like
right.
they are a very good firm. um and so I got pinged effectively from them saying, hey, there's this like the Thiel Fellowship thing, which I was aware of. But you should hop on the phone with this woman who is absolutely incredible, and like talk through it and see if it's something you want to do. Typically, it's an application process. So I'm a little bit different in that capacity. Typically, you
Mm,
apply, it gets reviewed, interviews, etc. Um, for me, it was a little bit more like recruited. Um,
mm.
but I went and did the interviews in LA. That was one of the last years that they did the interviews in person. And you get to interview with incredible people like Dylan Field, right? Which like this was
Wow.
before Figma like
Yeah,
exited. And
yeah.
so
Right.
getting to like talk and hang out with him and Josh Browder and all these like really remarkable people.
Mm.
And you'll have to excuse my pups in the background.
No
Um,
worries. No worries.
and so yeah, it's like went through it, was lucky enough to be picked. They pick about 20 kids every year out of, they don't share the public numbers, but it's far a far lower acceptance rate than the top universities, like
Wow.
by like a pretty massive amount.
Mm.
um And I would say too, like the thing for us, like when I got in, we were just closing Coders Series A, so we just got our Series A term sheet, and we're closing that. And I'd say the most valuable piece was just the fact that I wasn't alone. Like, as you can imagine, being like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and building a company is super, super lonely.
Mm,
Like, all your friends are going to college or like quote unquote friends. Cause realistically, like, there's no founders who, like, young founders who are putting their day in, day out who have many friends, like, by
mm,
definition, because you're giving it all to your company. And
mm,
so it's like, I should say, all the people are going to college and doing all these things. And like, you're building this company, and the stress and the problems you're dealing with are adult problems. And
mhm,
it's
mhm,
like, I have 30, 40 people, 50 people that if I fail, like, they can't pay their mortgage. Like, that's a big
mm.
fucking deal. And,
Right,
or at least
right.
I think it is. I know a lot of
Of course.
founders don't care about that stuff, but like, I do. And
Mm,
so, like, the idea that, like, the Thiel Foundation put together the 20 other kids in the world who are like exploring and experiencing those same things at various stages, obviously, like some were earlier than me, for example, like, was really cool. And like, some of those kids have like ended up being like truly great friends of mine.
mm,
So I'm very grateful. I think that without it, like, I'd have, yeah, I would go from like an already small group of friends to an even smaller one.
mm. Wow. One one decision or one bet, I would say, can change people's life, right? What are some bets you took in your founder career that actually changed people's lives?
I mean, gosh. I mean, all I do is take bets. Like, right? Like, you know, starting Coder, certain product decisions, like accepting certain partners in terms of investors, scheduling meetings, like all those different things. It's constant who to hire, like all these
Mm,
different changes, strategy and directional shifts. I mean, yeah, I mean, who I am and where I am today is a collection of the positive bets that paid off, and then obviously
mm.
subtracting the ones that didn't.
Of
And
course,
so
yeah.
it's, yeah, I mean, I would say that like it is literally thousands and thousands of decisions that I have had to make, from everything from like little product design to distribution and marketing strategies to like approvals for spend or everything else, even what books that I read. And
Mm,
when I pick a book to read, like I don't just go like, oh, what's a good book, like I don't just go through a list of like, here are the 20 books that an entrepreneur needs to read. I'll think about what
mm,
I'm struggling with and then hunt for whatever resource can help solve that. Again, we
mm,
talked about like the courage piece. Like, I felt
mhm,
like that was something that I needed to re-up. And like,
mm.
like that's a natural trait of mine, but like I needed to like remind myself of it.
Yeah.
And so even that is like a bet, right? It's like, I'm betting that it's worth spending the time
Yeah.
for me to read
Yeah.
this book and that it's going to have some positive output. So I know it's not a very like concrete answer, but it's just, there are so many bets that you have to take every
Of course.
single day. I mean,
Right.
I've probably made like, just today alone, like we finished probably like 6 hours of team meetings and budget reviews and goal reviews and all that sort of stuff, because we do it on Fridays instead of Mondays, because we like to work over the weekend. Like,
Mm,
again, like, not work over the weekend, don't want to like stress people out, but like, I find it useful for me to do those reviews on a Friday so that I get to spend some extra time
mm,
and like make that transition.
mm.
So in any event, yeah, I've probably made like 100 decisions today already. That's an
Wow.
overstatement. Maybe it's like 10, like 10 good ones, hopefully. So
Wow. It's amazing. If you want to pinpoint um, one other decision today, just today, that will change, again, not to reveal much, but
yeah, I mean,
what
I
would
can
that
I
be?
can name one. So like I mentioned, as a startup, you transition from just finding product market fit to scaling.
Right.
And you run into this idea of, again, like managing to your metrics. This is something that the Wander board, Alex Bard and from Redpoint, and then Chucky Reddy from QED have been really exceptionally helpful with.
Mm,
And basically you have what you call plan, right? So it's like your pace of scale. So for Wander,
mm,
it's homes onboarded, like occupancy, like all these numbers, users, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so you have to, as a founder, basically like set and analyze that plan alongside finance. It's basically like the quote unquote boring stuff, right? Like, but it impacts the rest of the company,
right.
because if I say, hey, I want to go from, 10 homes a month to 25 homes a month by the end
Right.
of, call it Q2,
Mm,
then like what is that hiring impact? And then what's that burn impact? And then of course you need to ensure that like those are all great people. And so a lot of the decisions that were made today was managing to those hyper specific metrics and numbers, and basically
mm,
me trying to forecast and set the future and say, okay, here are all the things that this company needs to do. And then the time that I spent was aligning the entire leadership team around that so that everyone knows exactly where we're marching and why we're marching. And then after this interview, just to like walk you through like the phase two of that, is I'll go and record a video for the rest of the team, because obviously like I won't be
mm,
able to talk to them all one on one. And we love
mm.
async, so we don't like doing,
Yeah,
all hands where
absolutely.
everyone needs to like ruin their day. So I'll record a video and explain exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, the importance, pieces to focus on,
Mm,
and gain alignment. So, it's one of those things where like if Wander yeah, I mean effectively it's like the decisions that I'm making today are will determine like, is Wander fundable for a series B in six
mm,
months? And what
right.
scale is it? And did we expand internationally? And how many homes do we have and locations and all that fun
Mm,
stuff? Um, so yeah, it's pretty important. And it's important I get it right too. Like make sure
mm,
that I do all of that within the constraints of the capital that we have and
right.
all those different pieces. So
Let's talk about Wander. First of all, that's amazing. Thanks for revealing that. Uh, let's talk about Wander. From coder to Wander, it's two different worlds. You're dealing with two different things completely, like quite different spectrum at the end of different spectrums. So, a why why can't you just start another coder or be in the same space, maximize your impact with minimum effort, and do even a great job like building some other developer tool or whatever it is. Number two, why real estate? It's such a messy thing. It's
yeah.
like, do you have experience in that, or how did you fit in?
Yeah. So Wander is obviously like very different from Coder in terms of the end product, in terms of the customers. There are, of course, like lots of similarities running one startup to the other in terms of the importance of team and culture and quality and brand and all those different pieces that like do transfer regardless of like what industry you're working on. I think that like you can look at some great founders, and to be clear, like I'm not comparing myself to them, but you look at like Elon, right? It's like Zip2 to a payments company, which like you would say
Hmm.
that's a big shift, to then like SpaceX, like that's an even bigger shift, and then like electric cars. And it doesn't really make sense until you learn who that person is, right? And it turns out that Elon, loved electric cars and wrote papers on them, and as a kid would
Hmm.
read books about space and sci-fi, and all of a sudden it starts to make a little bit more sense. Like for me, like I would travel around with my pop everywhere. And like I've been to, every state, dozens of countries, like all before like
Hmm.
I grew up. And that made me fall in love with hospitality and travel and like all these different pieces. And so when I stepped down from Coder, I was like, what do I want to build? How do I want to spend the rest of my life? Now, candidly, like the idea for Wander was not something that I expected to build. It
Hmm.
just happened to keep me up at night. Like, I just couldn't ignore it. Like, I had that idea shortly after stepping down from Coder, alongside a lot of like enterprise B2B type software companies.
Mm-hmm.
And like I made an explicit choice that like
Mm.
after trying to kill the idea on paper for 3 months that this is what I wanted to build and how I wanted to spend my life because I thought it would have an impact and make it more interesting. And I was certainly right. I mean, again, like, I started, it's like this week was San Francisco to Portland, Portland to Boulder, Boulder to San Diego, San Diego to
Wow.
Seattle, Seattle. Now I'm in Austin. And then it's like I'm here for the next like 2 days. And then it's like on the road
Wow.
again. And it's like, what a great adventure. Like,
Mm.
so I think that, um, it certainly is different than like what I had built previously, but also like building great software, building a great user experience, certain cultural dynamics or things that are just like who I am. And so yeah, when you look at Wander, when someone goes to wander.com, if they're ever wondering like who is John Andrew, it's
Right.
like this company is a reflection of me in every
Mm.
respect. And it's obviously like not entirely perfect, but I'm certainly trying to make it so. Um, and yeah, I feel incredibly lucky to be working on this company every day with the team. And we got very lucky that this idea turned out to be something that people wanted.
Mm. And it's again like real estate is such a traditional thing. I would say like not many tech uh, folks solved it. Like apart from the Airbnbs of the world. Uh, when you entered, do you know that you can do it alone? Number one, you have to hire people, and I think you need capital, and you have to raise money. How did you convince investors when it comes to like credibility for this particular problem that you want to solve? What was like your pitch, and how did you get their buy-in?
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate that all of Wander's early investors to some extent had seen me work before in Coder. They had
Hmm.
observed how I execute the teams that I build, how quickly I move, and I was very fortunate that that was something that meant that they wanted to work with me again. Um, so that's probably not really like actionable advice for a first time founder. So I'll go earlier in my life to me raising my seed round for Coder.
Hmm.
And it's actually very similar in the context of we didn't even have I didn't even have a LinkedIn. It was like super young, like in my teens still, had no connection to Silicon Valley, knew no investors, knew no one. And of course was also in Austin, which is not San Francisco where like you can throw a
Mm-hmm.
rock and
Mm-hmm.
hit a VC. And so like what I did is like we kept building the product and I just started cold emailing people and I was like, this is what we're building, like please talk with me. And what ended up happening is that it wasn't that they like took the meeting because of who I was or my credibility. They took the meeting because the product was like so radical and intense and like real.
Mm.
And the branding was real, and that there was clearly like this monstrous amount of work and effort that had been put in to a company that hadn't been funded. And so, you know, uh, when they saw that, when they started having the conversations, and then obviously like understood, who we were as entrepreneurs and founders, then things very very quickly shifted. And then as the product started to gain traction, then obviously it was a completely different story.
Mm.
Um, so that's my biggest advice: is like show people who you are, show them how great you are, show them the output, and I
Mm.
promise you that like a VC's job is to find high potential individuals and to fund them. And so
Mm.
you have to be like relentless and show the world like just what you can do and who you are. And then if you talk to them and show them from the time we started the conversations with those investors to the time that we closed the round, Coder had gone from like 0 to 60,000 users. It was like a
Wow.
product that was like people were massively excited about. And again, turned out that the monetization like didn't work in that variant, but that's where like who did you invest in also comes into play. And like the
Right.
investors, like they asked me, they said like, what are you going to do if you run out of money? And
Right.
my answer was uh, that I am going to go to McDonald's and I am
Mm-hmm.
going to work as a fry cook and I'm going to feed food to my co-founders and we're going to keep this company alive. And they're like, okay, that's a pretty wild answer. Like you're supposed to say that you'd raise a bridge round or something, but it's like, we'll take it. And it's like, those are the type of people that you want to invest
Mm,
in. Is you want to
right.
invest in a great idea led by like someone who's never going to quit and like this is their life. And yeah, if you want to raise money, you have to be that kind of person too. Um, Obviously, a lot of bad people, raise
Sure.
money as well,
Sure.
but that's also why a lot of companies don't work out.
Right. Right. I think 99.9% success depends on not giving up, right? That
Totally, it's that
1%.
classic Paul Graham essay, right? Don't die.
Yeah, don't die. I love that. And when you explored Wander, what was like the first initial? Are you still pursuing the initial idea? Did you pivot? What are some lessons you learned?
Yeah,
Because it's slightly different from Airbnb. Airbnb lets people come join their platform. It's like a marketplace, but Wander is something that you have that control. You have that end-to-end control, and you offer on top of it. Like, I love the feature. I might try someday. Also have homes with Teslas, right? Like that's an additional feature which I love. You kind of are giving a whole package for people who want to work, who want to have a good vacation, etc., etc. Is that the initial idea, or did it change over time?
yeah, I can explain the idea pretty simply, and and the thesis behind it, and it's really that vacation rentals, short-term rentals, are a growing percentage of lodging. So now they're anywhere between 15 and 19% of lodging, depending on which study you read, which is
Hmm.
hundreds of billions of dollars of transaction volume, millions of users, like pretty massive amounts of capital and money flowing around. And
Hmm.
obviously supporting massive public market caps like Airbnb, which is an obviously like incredible company. And I also think Brian is like super badass. My thesis was that if you look at the rest of hospitality and lodging, you have all of
Right.
these known brands, right? Four Seasons, Ritz Carlton, Marriott,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that users gravitate towards because they know that there's going to be consistency and quality and
Sure.
all of these other things. And that's something that obviously like a marketplace typically lacks, right? It's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
discoverability versus like knowing what you're going to get. And
Right.
so my idea with Wander was effectively, what if we could create a consistent and quality experience across a portfolio of all of the most incredible locations and create a
Hmm.
strong brand and distribution around that, and
Hmm.
effectively create this like entirely new like experience where like it was like the hotelification of vacation rentals. And
Hmm.
so everything that we do is in pursuit of that big idea. And everything that we do in that vein is also in pursuit of helping our users find their happy place, right? This
Hmm.
idea of, making it so that you can go on this incredible adventure and stay at this incredible home that like, in this place that you didn't even know exists and have memories with your loved ones and have happiness and joy and all those different pieces. So that's the big theme behind Wander. And in terms of scale, it's really just like adding as many locations across the US and then, starting in 2024, like across the globe, and
Hmm.
basically building this like really incredible network of places for people to stay. It's this idea of like the infrastructure to experience the world is like what I want it to turn into. So yeah, that's the company.
Uh, and how are you navigating the heavy lifting? Because buying a property, redesigning it or rebuilding it, or even aligning it to your values and your standards,
Yeah,
the ones that you promise to the customers, it's a lot of it's a lot of work. So
totally.
how are you navigating that with the team, and what are you like, what decisions are you making in those in buying these homes and making them high
Yeah,
quality?
so Wander has two supply side strategies. So one is ownership, and then the other is
Mm,
when we take control of the asset on behalf of the property owner. Basically, like, operating the property to our standard, very similar to how a hotel does it, right? These hotels now are entirely asset light. They own
mm,
very little real estate, and they basically operate it to their standard. And another easy way to think about it is like a franchise. Um,
mm,
and so, bringing a home to standard obviously costs money. We're
mhm,
fortunate that in our model, that's something that the owners of the properties pay for.
mm,
And yeah, it's basically around operationalizing the logistics. Like, every home is also, unique, but of course, like a lot of things are very similar. And so as you scale and do more and more, the operations become like more unified and less complex and obviously more
mm,
organized. Um, and so it is certainly a lot of work, but when you actually look at like the value of each location in a wander model, because we obviously focus on homes that are really special.
mhm,
um like it makes a lot of sense. They're all profitable because the costs are offloaded to the
mm,
owner. They're all profitable within year one. So
mm. And I think I saw this on Wander's website. You also encourage people to buy properties and you help them uh, make a living, right? Like as a passive income, if I'm not wrong.
yeah, so
Um,
if someone's interested in basically like purchasing a wander type property, like we can surface
right.
opportunities to them. And
Mm,
I wouldn't say in the current rate environment that I would recommend it as um like a way to like get rich quick. Like
mm,
that's not the vibe, but it
mm,
certainly is an incredible way to invest in real estate, specifically a potential second home, and
mm.
have the property, cover all expenses, if not throw off some free cash flow as well. So
That's very interesting to me because we recently bought a home and my God, it's such a messy thing. It's not
it's a full
straightforward.
job. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so time consuming, it's so demanding. But I think I love what you're doing, and I would love to see that program expanded to just home buyers or like second home buyers,
Totally.
uh, because I think it'll make a massive impact because it's like it's like iPhone when you live in a BlackBerry world,
Yeah. It's
right?
it's really yeah, candidly, like we yeah, we're very lucky that our users love our product so much. Like our customer satisfaction is like 93%, which,
Wow.
for like context, birthdays in America are 89%. So it's like people love this product. And that's a
Oh
real
man,
that's a real like score, by the way. That's not like that's a how would you rate your
you should.
experience on a scale of 1 to 10? Like if it's raining, someone will give us an 8. Like so it's sort of like, yeah, it's it's certainly a lot of work, but it's incredibly
Right.
high mode as well. And I think that
Mm,
that's something that a lot of founders forgot, and a lot of VCs certainly forgot, is that if you can build a company to the moon in a year, like
mm,
it's probably pretty low moat. And I think like we saw a lot of that, like, like FTX being like a great example.
yeah,
Obviously, like there
yeah.
was some deep fraud committed there as
Mhm,
well,
mhm,
but
mhm.
it's like, that went from like zero to $1 billion plus in
Mm,
revenue in like a year, and then it imploded.
yeah.
Like, so it's like building something that's really valuable takes time. You're looking for like good compounding growth. You're looking for something that's high moat. And if you think about Wander's moat, it's like we control the properties, we control the distribution, we control the brand. Like it's a
Mm,
platform. It's not
mm,
just like a marketplace.
mm.
It's like
Yeah,
a
that's why
real yeah, it's a real platform.
that's one thing I love about Wander is that you have control. Like it's not like you're over promising and delivering. You promise and you keep that promise, right?
And the cool thing is like how you're taken care of as well. Like if you reach out to
Mm,
Airbnb support, they can't.
yeah.
Again, Airbnb being like a different example, but like the point is that people can't solve the problems in the way that we can. Like
Right.
we are deeply, tightly integrated. Like I'm personally looking at every piece of customer feedback and input. Like we are very much dedicated to building a hell of a product, and it's certainly going to be very difficult and time consuming. But we have
Yeah.
this one thing that so few others do, which is people love it. And it's like, if
Hmm.
you build something that people love and people want, like, then
Yep,
obviously,
that's it.
scaling it is difficult, but that's like, chapter one is like
Yep.
builds classic YC statement, right? Build something people want.
Yeah,
So
I love it. That's why
yeah, it looks good. I
I love
appreciate
it,
the
man.
support.
I
It
love
really,
the
it really means the world to me. So
yeah, I love the vibe when you guys launched in 2021. I think Kyle Tibbetts, I follow him on Twitter. He's a machine. The way he does
Kyle is
marketing,
the best CMO I've ever worked with.
yeah, he's a machine,
If
man.
anyone tries to poach him, by the way, from this, like, I will like be very angry. Uh, like, that's a hell of an endorsement. No, Kyle's obviously very, very, very invested in Wander.
Yeah,
And also he views it the same way I do. Like, we've seen enough startups to know that Wander has the
yeah,
potential to be something really rare.
yeah, and
Um,
really big too, not just rare. It's going to be very big. I'm bullish on it. Wanna I know we're a little over time. I wanna have a couple of questions. What's next for Wander? What is the insane, ridiculous dream that you have for Wander that you haven't shared with anyone, not even with your team? That's like one of the things I had in my mind when I was actually going through Wander's website. Feel free to shut it down. I think just the way uh, rental short rental industry sucks, flighting the flights suck, man. Like it's one of the things I hate. The whole process is so messy. It's still 40 years backwards. You still have to like do a lot of paperwork and all the shit. Like if you lose a baggage, it's shit. I think Wander should make it complete package, meaning literally from your doorstep to Wander's doorstep. I would
yeah.
love to see that. That's, I think, the ridiculous dream I kind of manifest for you guys, but I would love to hear your take.
No, I mean, I love it, right? It's the idea for Wander, again, like, if you were to say, like, what's under Wander's scope, the big scope is the infrastructure to experience the world. Like, the product and what we're doing today is going to be just one small piece if we end up being a rare and important company of what Wander will be. In the same way that Amazon started by selling books, and then, you know 20 years later, 30 years
Mm-hmm,
later,
mm-hmm.
they're the company that's in front of us today. That is what
Yeah.
Wander is going to become. We are going to
Mm,
become a multi-pronged, multi-product company oriented around
mm,
travel and quality, and building the first customer first travel
mm,
company that exists, with a focus
mm,
on technology and ease. And we'll take ownership of the things that we need to own to ensure that that's true.
mm.
So you're not far off. Now, obviously, there are a incredible amount of things that need to get solved between here
Absolutely.
and there, and it's going to take a lot of years. And I'll probably have very much like less hair when we get there, which I look forward to. I look forward to, like, if we're lucky enough to make it. Looking back on
You
this
will for sure.
interview, oh,
Yeah. Well,
we'll
we'll bring
see.
you back. Yeah.
We'll try.
I'll be there for sure. Yeah.
And yeah, I look forward to being bald and full of wrinkles at, like, whatever, like 20, like, 35 or something. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of exciting things. I mean, you're going to start
Mm,
to see the early signs of that, right? Like, we just rolled out chat and app and on web. We'll be
mm,
integrating like these large language models into that, and then integrating
mhm,
that into the APIs of our own and other companies. So soon you'll be able to ask, like, hey, I want to book a flight for these people and stay at this house
mhm,
for these dates and book these activities, and it'll all
mm,
automatically be done for you. And
mm.
obviously, like, that sounds so ridiculous, but like, that future is here, where everyone can
Mhm.
have their own personal travel
Assistant.
agent.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of really cool things that are in the works. Obviously, we have to build a lot of systems for scale as well. We've recently gone
Mhm.
from doing, like, 2 3 homes a month, to now we're doing 5 6 7 a month, 10 a month.
Yeah.
And that is a remarkable amount of work, and so you have to build a lot
Mm,
of systems for that as well. So I'd say that 80% of our focus is on scale,
yeah.
20% of our focus, and like making everything work in that vein. And then the other
Mm,
20% is like these, like, really radical features. And then, if you fast forward into 2024, you'll be looking at international expansion and like that
Right.
same story. And then from there, you're going to look at new verticals being added. I can't tell you exactly which ones they're going to be,
Mhm.
as it'd be likely to change. I'd have to give like a percentage that would be very low on like what
Mhm.
I thought. But yeah, there's so much opportunity. Like no one is over the moon about their travel experience,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
like I think I'd love to solve that for them.
you have so much ground to cover. Let me tell you that. I'm not a frequent traveler, but when I travel, I always have this regret. Why can't people make it super simple? You know, we went to SF.
Even using existing infrastructure. Like I want
Yeah,
my app to tell me like arrive to the airport at this time, like your car is for you outside, like and then it shows me like with an arrow like where do I go to my gate? Like all these different pieces. All this again is super technologically difficult. So like all the skeptics who are listening, like you are absolutely right. This is like years away, but it's still cool to think about obviously.
no, it's solvable, right? I, it is something that you can solve for, right? And we went to SF in July to celebrate my little guy's birthday, second birthday, and we boarded United. For whatever reason, flights canceled. We had to stay
Yeah.
in Chicago. All the shit happened. They lost our bag. You know what? There is no way to call people of United and ask for the status. You had to wait for a couple of hours to just to.
Oh, I've been stuck in airports overnight many times. It's like it's delayed, 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 and then like 3 in the morning it gets canceled. Yeah.
That's insane. So I
Again,
would
it's about customer
manifest to.
just yeah, a
I would
customer first
manifest
company.
to. Yeah. It's like customer centric, service minded leadership is what lagging in these traditional old school methods of running companies. Wandris has such an opportunity, I feel, to revolutionize or innovate, really like, air travel as well.
Yeah, we have
Uh,
we have the opportunity to scale what we're currently doing, which we're fortunate that that has product market fit, and obviously
right.
like we need to scale that. But then the cool thing is that like, you can imagine a few tabs getting added to the platform. You can imagine
Mm,
things like even like home sharing or
yeah.
even like a curated marketplace. You can imagine
Hmm.
like this AI concierge
Hmm.
dealing with like all of your travel. Like you can even imagine longer term stays and like wander
Yeah.
urban, hopping from city to city, events and experiences. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so much opportunity. And again, like, this all it's difficult to talk about the future without seeming like super naive and crazy. But at the end of the day, it's fun.
Yeah.
And like that's a big part of it.
That's what I love about building startups, right? Like we imagine this grand, you know, grand vision, and
And
we
I think
take
that
baby
that
steps
triggers
towards
I
it.
think that triggers a lot of people. Like I think that there are certain people who hope that you fail because you
Wow.
thought so big. And like it is likely to fail. I think that's the one thing too that I would say is like I am not ignorant to the fact
Yeah.
that like failure is of course like incredibly likely. But
I think
the key is
I,
just to work hard and and see how special it can be.
I feel honestly, this is what I believe in. Trying is important. Winning or failing, it's like you said, is external, constraints that will add to that outcome, right? Trying is something that we control completely end to end. You have a vision, you have a dream, try it. Just give it a shot. Forget
Absolutely.
about like working
And
it or
and
not.
for whoever's listening who needs to hear it, I am rooting for you. If you're chasing your dream, I personally am rooting for you. So
Awesome. Yeah, man. That's amazing. John Andrew, this has been. I can go on and on. I don't know if about you, but I have this weird energy on a Friday evening that's that's not transferable for fun or anything. I want to build something now. You kind of inspired me now. This has been amazing, so many lessons, so many incredible lessons. I love the frameworks. I kind of the problem solving mechanisms, the way you view startups, start from zero. It never gets easier, and I feel like you have this energy that's contagious, and like you said, the least we can do is to root for someone to win. right? Who has dreams, who have bigger visions, so bigger ambitions. So on that note,
It's
thanks,
been a
John Andrew.
it's been a total pleasure. You've done an incredible job. Like, I'm so stoked for you. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been truly a joy. So
Awesome. I did. I think I did my job. Thanks, folks. Thanks, guys, for listening. Appreciate your time and attention. We have awesome guests coming on the pod. That's John Andrew, and I'm signing off. Sharath from the Undefeated Underdogs podcast. Stay healthy, guys. Stay ambitious. Do your thing. Cheers.